weekend. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Family, quality, value. With a legacy of excellence for over 40 years, Horn Heating and Air Conditioning will make your house feel like a home. Welcome home to the feeling of HornHVAC.com.
Your Tuesdays just got a lot better. The Good Soul, a feel-good show that dives into the stories of extraordinary people, is headed to WSIC. Host Patty Alvarez brings a sit-down, fun conversation to the airwaves to give you an early week pick-me-up.
The following is a paid program and does not necessarily reflect the views of WSIC.
Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us here at the 4 o'clock hour here on Thursday. If you're a 9 to 5er, you got 53 minutes, 25 seconds until you get to that 5 o'clock bell. I appreciate so much you spending that time here with us as we give attention to and perhaps even spark some conversation regarding items of financial, economic importance. Now, we got a lot on our plate here today. I'm sure you can probably guess where at least some of the theme is going to be here, considering the happenings of this week. But we're going to talk about all kinds of things, companies included. We're going to be looking at some earnings reports here, some companies that are coming out a little bit later in the earnings cycle with some of the things that they need to do for their 10Qs on their quarterlies. But in doing so, we're going to be looking at some things positively, maybe some things not so positively. Nothing that we're talking about here, as you know, is intended as a specific recommendation for you, meaning that we strongly encourage you, reach out to your tax advisor, your financial advisor, or if you'd like to reach out to us at North Main Financial Group, love to hear from you. Love to chat about your particular financial situation, see if there are ways in which we might be able to help you on your financial journey. Online, you can find us at northmainfinancial.com. That's north like the direction, Main like the street, financial.com. Northmainfinancial.com. We have a contact page on there. Leave us a phone number or an email address. Let us know the most preferred and desirable ways for us to contact you, again, at northmainfinancial.com. You're also welcome to call us here in the studio. I mean, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, there probably has been a little bit of news this week, right? I mean, yeah, probably. Yeah, there's been a little bit of news here this week, at least from the calls, emails, and texts that I've received so far over the last 48 to 72 hours. There's been quite a bit going on here this week. Can't promise I'm going to get to your specific question, but make sure you leave it with producer Reese here. And if I can get to it, I promise that I will. If I can't get to it this show, I'll get to it next show. I promise you. 844-STUDIO-4. That's 844-788-3464 here in the studio. 844-788-3464 here in the studio. Definitely leave your question. If I can get it into the show, I promise I'll integrate it. And because I want it to be relevant, right? I want it to be relevant to the kinds of things that are high on your radar screen, things that are important to you, and make sure that we're delivering content here that is helpful and, I'll admit it, maybe even a little bit amusing or entertaining along the way. All right, let's get into it. What's hot here? How can we look at anything other than what's happened here over the last couple of days? And I have to give a couple of caveat emptors, right, before we get into things here. So we obviously had elections here within the last couple of days as of the time of this recording. So we had elections here, lots of focus, tons of focus on the Oval Office, but we also had congressional, we also had state level, we also had local level kinds of things that were part of the election cycle this time around. Not at the municipal level. That's going to be next time. That's going to be a year out. But a lot of elections. I mean, if you went to vote, which I hope you did, that you saw there were a lot of choices on there. Everything from the Oval Office to our local judges. And so a lot of decisions to be made, even a couple of referendum, depending upon where specifically you live. And so a lot of choices that were made. And so I'm going to start out with a couple, like I said, of a couple of caveats before we jump in here. The chances are, if you're listening to my voice right now, especially if it's on the live broadcast, but even on the recording, if you happen to listen to the podcast here, roughly half of you were pleased with what happened at the highest levels, and probably roughly half of you are not pleased as much. Is that a politically correct way to say it on that end of things? That's part of it. Part of who we are, not only as a country right now, but if you look at the state of North Carolina in terms of the number of folks who actually vote. So I have to say it this way. the number of folks who vote, we are relatively a purple state, meaning the number of folks who vote, relatively speaking, balanced between Republicans who are registered Republicans, registered Democrats, and then also those who are unaffiliated and independent in terms of the folks who actually vote. And I say that, and I always caveat it that way as well, because unfortunately we don't have all folks who are eligible to vote. And that's true in every election. We tend to get higher percentages as we get into the presidential election year. So we had roughly 2/3 to roughly 70% of the folks who are eligible to vote who did vote during this cycle. Very common, actually a little bit higher in terms of turnout, but very common for that kind of thing. So that's why I caveat it in that way. So I say that, again, to talk about what we're talking about here in terms of what happened in the elections, to say that roughly half of you probably were pleased, roughly half of you probably less than pleased at some levels, but nevertheless, here we are. And so I say all of that, to talk about it because that's what it is, but then also to give a little bit of context to what I'm going to say next. And it's probably going to offend everybody on both sides, and that's kind of the intent, I guess, in looking at it. But it's true. And that is for all the folks who are very, very happy about all things economic and financial with regards to the elections, and with folks who maybe aren't as pleased, who are looking at things and catch me on this. I mean, check out the Googles. The Googles will tell you that what I'm talking about here is actually correct. Do you know that the best market performance over the last 80 years has occurred on average whenever there is not one party which controls the Oval Office, the Senate, and the House? I'm going to say that again, and you don't have to believe me. This is not commentary here. But the best market performance on average, as measured by the S&P 500 index, happens when there is not the same party which is in the Oval Office and in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, obviously looking at federal offices there. Kind of interesting to keep in mind. And that's not to say that I'm predicting some kind of market crash or frankly some kind of market exuberance, although we certainly had that here a couple of days ago whenever things kind of took off on the Wednesday following the elections. But I would offer up to you, this is very important to keep in mind, very serious, joking aside here, very important to keep elections in any cycle in context. I'm going to be talking about this a lot today because I've had, I don't know, several dozen conversations between phone and email and text with a lot of you out there about what's happened here over the last 48 hours. Again, some happy, some others not so happy with what. When you really need to look at the context of elections with regards to market performance, and specifically this. So I gave you one data point there showing how, on average, that the market performs best whenever there are different parties in the houses of Congress and the Oval Office. But then I'm going to give you another one here as well. The market, generally speaking, is either overly exuberant or overly negative the day after the election. It just is. I mean, that's a relatively new phenomenon. Let me put that in the context of the last 20 years in terms of election cycles, that the market tends to get unnaturally exuberant or unnaturally negative in the day following the election cycle, or the election day, excuse me. And that has become somewhat more commonplace, as I mentioned. But it's also important to recognize that what the market usually does, actually I'm going to say it always does in this day and age, that it always does is it begins to recognize that there is no possibility, and this is true whether you like who's in office or not, that there's no possibility for the Oval Office to dictate unilaterally fiscal and monetary policy. Just going to remind everybody of that. Just can't. And you may want for that person in office to do that. Sorry, can't happen that way. And if you're concerned about the person who's in the Oval Office being able to do that, just a reminder, he or she can't. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's in the seat. Cannot happen that way. And so I say that, and yes, you may be nodding your head and say, of course, we know that that's the case. But I find that I need to remind folks about that because it seems like that there is this assumption that's made. And I have to say, with regards to the market performance that we saw here on Wednesday, that there's some assumption that there's just unilateral fiat. No, doesn't happen that way. Sorry to disappoint some and maybe to give some more excitement to others. All right, we're going to take a few seconds here to hear from our sponsors here on WSIC. Appreciate you hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. Hang with us as we come back for the second quarter.
Dollars and Cents with your host, certified financial planner Joshua Dobi, continues straight ahead.
With a scattered shower possible, temperatures will stay pretty mild in the low to mid 60s. Into our Thursday we go, more clouds than sunshine. Still can't totally rule out a scattered shower as we work our way through the day, although I expect most of us will end up staying dry. Dry weather on the way back for our Friday as temperatures are still back in the low to mid 70s. We'll cool it down in just a bit heading into the weekend. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
The WSIC app is available now wherever you get your apps, featuring local deals from great local businesses like Nina's Boutique.
Cakes and cookies, toys and gifts. The Southern Christmas Show, November 14th through 24th at the Park Expo and Conference Center. Save on tickets at southernChristmasShow.com, courtesy of Kraft Body Scan. The Southern Christmas Show.
Here is your WSIC community calendar. The Dirt Track at Charlotte Motor Speedway presents the World of Outlaws World Finals Wednesday through Saturday. Catch Dirt Racing's top 3 series for 4 days of action to decide their championships, featuring the World of Outlaws Sprint Car Series, the World of Outlaws Late Model Series, and the Super Dirt Car Big Block Modifieds. Single day and 4-day ticket packages plus camping information are all available at charlottemotorspeedway.com. Often imitated, never duplicated. The World of Outlaws World Finals invade the Charlotte Motor Speedway Dirt Track this weekend. Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville is having a veterans celebration on Sunday. Rocky Lynn will perform and rock the lot in a special outdoor concert. Beer Lab and Ghostface Brewing will be offering their full menu of drinks and food. Bring your chairs and enjoy this Veterans Day salute with a Rocky Lynn concert Sunday at Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville. The Mooresville Veterans Day Parade and celebration honors veterans from all branches and from all conflicts. The parade begins Monday, November 11th at Richard's Coffee Shop at 1 p.m. and travels to Mooresville Town Hall. Come join and say thank you to our veterans and hometown heroes on Monday, November 11th in downtown Mooresville. To keep up with all the events happening around the community and much more, including amazing local deals, download the WSIC News app today.
The Renaissance Festival is back Saturdays and Sundays, now through November 24th. There's music, comedy, circus entertainments. Huzzah! Tickets available online only at renfestinfo.com while supplies last.
Making your money make sense. Dollars and Cents with CFP Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for coming with us here. Second quarter of today's show, football reference. It's football season, folks. You get football, fun, and finance. How do you like that alliteration? That just came out. Football, fun, and finance here on Dollars and Cents. And it's football season. When it's not football season, we talk about how many days it is until football season here. And I got to say there's some renewed... This is just a personal, very biased reflection. Renewed exuberance about our Carolina Panthers. Great to see the win this past week. Great to see it. And we're on a winning streak. I don't care how you define it. We are now officially on a winning streak that we're going to look to extend this week as well. And if my math is correct, we are still technically eligible not only to make the playoffs but to win the Super Bowl. I believe that is correct. So and producer Reese has given me the thumbs up there, and because we've said it's true, it is. And so that's the way we're going to play it. And so we're looking forward to it. This week, get on the bandwagon. It's time to go. Panther Pride. Here we go. Anyhow. Appreciate you hanging with us here and enjoying the football commentary along with the financial commentary there. We talked in the first segment about obviously one of the hottest thing of the week with regards to the elections. And you probably heard me say, and it was intentionally so, probably trying to offend folks on all sides of the aisle, but really wanted to give some context into what elections mean for the markets and for the economy. I mean, again, I've had literally dozens of conversations in the last 48 to 72 hours in talking about this person being in office, what does that mean? This person being in office, what does that mean? Folks, and I know it's very emotional on both sides, both in terms of the exuberance and also in terms of what sometimes is the dejection with not having your candidate win. Folks, nobody moves unilaterally. Actually, if you're going to watch anything with intensity, watch Congress. Watch the balance in Congress. Watch the positions of the folks who are going to be the leaders in Congress. Those are the folks who are going to be moving things from a fiscal standpoint. And those are the folks who are, it's going to be significant for this coming year. You're going to hear me talk a lot about this on Dollars and Cents heading into the new year, talking about what that means for tax policy, and specifically for those tax policies which are scheduled to sunset at the end of 2025. We're going to talk about that a lot, and about where the positions are and where Congress is moving on that kind of thing. So if you want to hyper-focus, actually that's where we should be focusing on it. But I get it. It's emotional. I understand that in both directions, right, with the exuberance and sometimes the dejection on that. But it's important to keep it in context. Nobody moves unilaterally when it comes to monetary and fiscal policy. It just doesn't happen. And so you need to take it in with the proper amount of context. And that brings me to a point with regards to the markets, because I've had this conversation a lot as well. And I hear it on other programs, not this one, not on Dollars and Cents, you're not going to hear it from me, but I hear it on other financial programs, television, those kinds of things, talking about the market trades that make sense based upon the election. Folks, just take a deep breath when you hear those kinds of things. And I get, there are some very, very intelligent people in this business. There are some very intelligent people that talk about the markets as well. But to talk about trades that make sense based upon who is sitting in the Oval Office, folks, it's just not true. It just isn't. And I challenge anybody to provide the data that shows that that's the case, where because of who's sitting in the Oval Office, certain trades are true. Now, whoever's sitting in the Oval Office will absolutely have their advocacy points, right? Those things which are most important to them, those things which they would like to see happen. Absolutely true. Are they influential on Capitol Hill? Absolutely true. Absolutely. They are influential on Capitol Hill. Do they unilaterally move policy that affects the economy in such a way where it makes sense to invest in certain companies and sectors? I know that was fast. Keep up. No, it's just not true. And I'm emphasizing this, and I'm staying on point here for very specific reasons, because I see it happening constantly. I see it happening this week. I see it happening in the markets. So it's not just a euphemistic, well, we think this might happen kind of thing. We're literally seeing it in terms of the things that are being bought and sold in the markets this week. Now, generally speaking, the market balances out. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Sometimes it happens in a little bit of a shorter time. But generally speaking, the market balances out into some semblance of reason. It's never fully reasonable, but in some semblance of reason of understanding that companies move and sectors move based upon a very large algorithm with dozens of variable inputs into it. It's not just one person sitting in the Oval Office. Is he or she influential? Absolutely. Does that dictate markets over the long term? No. Check me on it, please. I mean, I've had a number of folks say, well, that's not true. Okay, check the data. Bring it to me. Because I do have the data. I know what it looks like. I know when there are Republicans in the Oval Office and when there are Democrats in the Oval Office, and I know what the markets have done. And you would probably be surprised to see. I know I'm not spending time today going on that because I don't want to create any more rancor than I probably already have in talking about how the markets move or don't move based upon these kinds of things. But really what I want to do on today's show, I want to bring some context to it. I want to bring some context to it, hopefully to alleviate either some of the concern or to mitigate some of the exuberance, because in either direction it gets dangerous. And I say dangerous from a financial standpoint, because folks start to make decisions based upon what they hope will happen based upon an emotional response to folks who have been elected into office. Folks, that doesn't work. It just doesn't. Again, don't believe me. Take a look at data over time with regards to who sits in the Oval Office and market performance. Because if you looked at what was predicted when certain folks were in office, either for folks who are for that person or against that person, and what actually matriculated over the following 4 or 8 years, it is diametrically different. I promise you. Take a look at it. It is diametrically different. And that's very, very, very important to keep in mind when we're looking at your portfolio, when we're talking about decisions that should be made. I mean, the conversations that I've had, I'm not making these up, the conversations that I've had with folks saying, so should we sell, XYZ stock or ABC sector because of this person, that person now being in office? Nope, not true. Truly, it's just not true. Now, if we want to input that as a variable for consideration, in addition to dozens of other variables for consideration for your specific space, is that a reason to make a tweak or adjustment? Maybe. But it's not true that it's that binary. So-and-so gets elected, we need to sell everything or buy everything. No, just not. And so I'm stressing that point, and I'm repeating that point very, very intentionally because I have heard it more times than I can count here over the course of this week. And it's important that you hear that from me because you need to make decisions for the right reasons. All right, let's keep going. All right, I know I've pounded on that. I know it's fairly academic. It sounds a little bit negative. So where do we go from here? You betcha, food. All right. Hershey's, HSY, ticker symbol Henry Sam Yellow. They came out with something here, and I have to admit, I am one of those persons. You put that combination of chocolate and peanut butter together, oh man, I probably could. You give me that and a bag of potato chips, and you could just turn out the lights and call me in a week because that might be all that I need for that time. Hershey's came out with this. This isn't the first time they've done this, but they came out with this, and it's limited distribution, so it's not everywhere. So you can't run into Food Line or Harris Teeter necessarily and find it, but you can order it online. It is the deconstructed peanut butter cup. Now, I know that's kind of a mouthful right there, maybe literally, no pun intended, but a deconstructed peanut butter cup for $29.99, you get a 10-ounce jar of Reese's peanut butter and a 9-ounce chocolate shell. And the idea behind it is you make your own gigantic Reese's peanut butter cup. I don't know about you, but that sounds really cool to me. Putting that together, I mean, you don't have to, it's not even the small one. I mean, if you put that, that's over a pound of chocolate and peanut butter. I mean, that's great. That would last me at least 20 or 30 minutes to get through that kind of thing. Hershey's coming out with this deconstructed through their Reese's brand. So Hershey owns Reese's. And the ticker symbol again on Hershey's, not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold HSY. But the deconstructed Reese's peanut butter cup, $29.99. You get a 10-ounce jar of Reese's peanut butter, 9-ounce chocolate shell, and you can literally put as much or as little peanut butter that you would like into the chocolate shell. I thought that was amazing. Next item on food here. Very, very important to keep in mind. If you are a fan, and I know that there are a lot of you out there who are a fan of this particular fast food that I'm going to say next, because there is literally a website to find out where these are being sold. So I'm going to bring in one that we do bring in with some regularity here, not because it's a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold the stock, or an advocacy for the food, but primarily because they're so well known and they're always making changes. McDonald's, Mary Charlie Daniel, MCD is the ticker symbol there. They are bringing the McRib sandwich back. Now, for those of you who may have several decades of experience like I do with all things food related, that you know what the McRib sandwich is. And if you have not had one, that's one of those things you got to try. And you may or may not like it, but it's one of those things you got to kind of try. McDonald's has brought it out several times through the years, and right now it's out in the UK, so not here in the US, but out in the United Kingdom. So you're literally going to have to get a very expensive plane ticket if you want to get it right now. However, there is rumor that it's going to be reintroduced here in the US in certain locations. And if you want to find out, that's the point I was going to raise, if you want to find out where the McRib is being sold, there is a McRib locator website. No lie, I checked it out. You can literally go on put it in the Googles. I mean, you don't have to believe me. You put it in the McRib locator. It will take you to the website, and you can find out where the McDonald's McRib is being sold right now. It's literally consumer input. They say, you know what, I found one in Topeka, Kansas, or wherever it may be. Like, okay, now we know that in Topeka, Kansas, you can go get a McRib sandwich. It's pretty unbelievable. So I'm not advocating for it, but I know it is impressively popular. And there are folks who literally scour the country, maybe even beyond the country, to find when they are being sold, because they don't come out very often, but they are out in the UK. That is confirmed through the McRib locator that you can get one in the UK, and supposedly they're going to be around here in the US going through Thanksgiving season into Christmas. You know, supposedly we're going to have McRibs here again here in the US. So if you are a McRib aficionado, that's going to be something that you want to keep in mind. So again, we've got the 1 pound plus deconstructed Reese's peanut butter cup. Couple that with the McRib sandwich. What else do you need? I mean, you're set. Literally, I think I could be for about a week or so with a steady supply of that. All right. We're going to take a break here to hear from our sponsors here on WSIC. Appreciate so much hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. Hang with us as we come back in a few moments for the second half.
More of Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi is coming up on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Well, mostly cloudy overnight with a scattered shower possible. Temperatures will stay pretty mild in the low to mid 60s. Into our Thursday we go. More clouds than sunshine. Still can't totally rule out a scattered shower as we work our way through the day, although I expect most of us will end up staying dry. Dry weather on the way back for our Friday as temperatures are still back in the low to mid 70s. We'll cool it down in just a bit heading into the weekend. That's your forecast. From the WSIC Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Inspire your team and gallop to greatness. Our horses at Willow Equine are outstanding at working with people on leadership and team building skills, perfect for corporate retreats. Visit willowequine.com as you gallop to greatness.
Hi, this is Bob McIntosh with the McIntosh Law Firm in Davidson. Since 1997, we have been committed to providing our clients with competent, caring, and experienced legal services. Learn more at McIntoshLawFirm.com.
Temperatures are heating up, but the prices are cooling down at Randy Marion Ford Lincoln here in Statesville. How about this? Over $8,000 off F-150s. That's the XLT trim, that's the Lariat trim, that's the Platinum trim, that's the Limited trim. That is the Crew Cab, that is the Super Cab. You name it, Randy Marion Ford. We got it right here in Statesville at a big discount on F-150s. Again, over $8,000 off. Come see us today, I-77, exit 49B.
This is Fred Lowry at Lowry Drug. We now have our own brand of full-spectrum hemp extract, also known as CBD oil. I personally manage this product as it was grown on my farm here in Iredell County. It was then processed and bottled here in Statesville. This is a true herbal extract with all the medicinal components intact. A product you can trust to be authentic. And since there is no wholesaler, it's at a price you can afford. Try it at Lowry Drug on Hartness Road in Statesville.
Kane Center for the Arts, Lake Norman's new hub for inspiration and community, offers performing arts, visual exhibits, and education in downtown Cornelius. See the full season schedule at canearts.org. That's C-A-I-N arts.org.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The Fed is cutting interest rates again following September's cut of 0.5 percentage point. Today, it was 0.25 percentage point. Fed Chair Jay Powell says today's decision is a further recalibration of the Fed's policy stance. The reaction on Wall Street, stocks are up between 0.1% and 1.5%. We do like our Yeti products. The company says it expects to reach the high end of its earnings guidance for the year after reporting stronger than expected sales in the third quarter. Helping power the gains, a 12% rise in the sale of coolers and equipment. Drinkware sales were up 9%. Beer drinkers are apparently cutting back. Molson Coors says its annual net sales will fall about 1% this year compared with last. That's due to lower sales during the peak summer season. Molson, that also makes Miller Lite and Blue Moon, is not alone in the challenges. Other big brewers like AB InBev and Heineken are also seeing a drop-off in consumer spending. I'm Nancy Lyons, Bloomberg Radio.
Making your money make sense. Dollars and Cents with CFP Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us here. Second half of today's show, Football Reference. Appreciate you hanging with us here. You've got 26 minutes and 8 seconds until you get to the 5 o'clock hour. If you're a 9-to-5er, and I appreciate you spending that time here with us on Dollars and Cents as we're giving attention to all things economic and financial. And we got pretty academic there a little bit, talking a little bit about the effects of the elections, or maybe lack of effects of the elections on the markets, and some good things to keep in mind there. And then we had some fun talking about food there. I mean, the McRib locator. If you need to find where the McRib is being sold, there's literally a website. You can go on there, check it out, and find out where the McRib from McDonald's is being sold. And then the 1 pound plus deconstructed Reese's chocolate, Reese's cup, the chocolate and the peanut butter separate, so you can put it together yourself and make one huge Reese's peanut butter cup. Not a bad way to go if you're into that kind of thing. But I appreciate you hanging with us here. We're going to shift a little bit academic. Got to bring this up. Happened literally today as of the time of this live broadcast, or as of the time of this recording, if you happen to be listening to the recorded version on podcast. Federal Reserve met this week. Hard to remember that in the midst of everything that happened this week, and certainly the noise that comes with presidential election season and all that accompanies it. But the Federal Reserve was meeting this week and announced today at about 2 o'clock Eastern about their next rate cut of the overnight lending rate. We've talked about that quite a bit here on this show, and talking about reducing the overnight lending rate, the rate they charge to member banks that borrow money from the Federal Reserve. Very, very common occurrence, happens daily, literally, and cutting the interest rate by a quarter of a percent, 1/4% or 25 basis points, as sometimes to which it's referred. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? What does that mean as far as practical day-to-day living is concerned? Because we see it, okay, the Federal Reserve cut rates. Is that good? Is that not good? Well, I'm going to give you a terrible answer to start. It could be either one, depending upon your particular vantage point and what it is that you're trying to do financially. Let me start on the savings side of things. So let's talk money markets, savings accounts, CDs or certificates of deposit. Probably what that's going to mean, I say probably because there's not a one-to-one correlation, but probably what that's going to mean is that the interest rates offered on money markets, savings accounts, and CDs are going to drop a little bit. So if you are one who invests there or saves there, you are going to experience possibly, not perfectly and not guaranteed, certainly, but you are going to experience the possibility of lower interest rates or lower amounts of interest earned on those instruments for the current time. So that's something to be expected. Now, if you're looking at it from the debt side of things, the borrowing side of things, it is possible, not guaranteed as well, because there is not a one-to-one correlation, but it is possible that you're going to see a reduction in the interest rates being charged for debt. And I'm looking very quickly at mortgages. I'm looking very quickly at lines of credit. I'm looking at commercial loans. I'm looking at automobile loans. I'm looking at credit card interest rates. Those kinds of things, which are variable and more, let's say, connected to the variability of interest rate movements on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, that you're going to see possibly some reduction in the rates that are being charged on that end of things as well. Now again, as I mentioned, just like on the savings side, it's not one-to-one. So it's not because the Federal Reserve has reduced rates that we're necessarily going to see that exact correlation to reductions in mortgage rates or automobile loans or anything like that. Very, very important to keep that in mind, because sometimes when folks say, well, they reduced it a quarter point, so we're going to see mortgages drop by a quarter point. No, not how it works, because there is not a one-to-one relationship, and for each financial institution, they're in a different place. So that the rates that each financial institution offers, let's say for a residential mortgage, the rates that they're going to offer, you're going to see different ones periodically between different institutions. Different institutions desire or maybe don't desire to have certain mortgages on their books at certain times. Ones that do or want more residential mortgages, especially in certain areas, they may be more aggressive about pricing those rates, meaning they'll offer some lower rates, perhaps even than where the market is. Those who are not interested as much in increasing their book or increasing the amount of residential mortgages that they're offering may offer higher rates in order to disincentivize folks from taking them out. So different lending institutions in different spaces have had that conversation a lot here over the last couple of days as we're talking about where interest rates are, anticipating that the Federal Reserve was going to cut rates as they did. Now, as we're looking at the balance of the year, Federal Reserve is going to have their final meeting for the calendar year here in December, so almost exactly a month from where we're sitting right now. They're going to have another meeting there, and it appears at this point, a lot can happen between here and there, but it appears at this point that there is going to be an additional rate cut at that time by the Federal Reserve of, at this point, what's anticipated to be 25 basis points or another quarter point. So that is to say, as we're looking at that, if that would matriculate in that way, we can anticipate a further drop in rates, both on the debt side and unfortunately also on the savings side of things. So what does all of that mean? So, all right, so we talked about it. We talked about Federal Reserve dropping rates. That may mean lower rates on the debt side, maybe cheaper to get a mortgage or an automobile loan, but you're not going to earn as much in your CDs and money markets. What are the practical consequences of something like that? Well, nothing's binary. So first of all, just because those things are happening doesn't mean necessarily that, A, X B, B moves C. There is not linear correlation with these things, but there are some things that may happen, and the kinds of things that we're watching at North Main Financial Group for what may happen with regards to the consumer spending, and then most importantly where that means for economic growth or lack of growth ongoing. What we're anticipating at this point, with the Federal Reserve continuing to drop rates, is that there may be, and I'm going to say may and could because all of these things are very fungible. There's no binary correlation here. That there may be some additional demand for residential mortgages, especially in spaces where rental rates are very high. Residential rental rates are very high. So I'm looking at high demand areas. Charlotte, North Carolina is certainly one of them. Austin, Texas in that space. Washington, D.C., South Florida. Those spaces which are very, New York City almost nonstop. On the West Coast, you're definitely looking at suburban Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco areas where residential rents are just, they're very, very high and very, very high demand. It could happen as rates fall that some folks who are paying very high rental rates for residential living right now may shift over and decide to take out a mortgage and buy something because their monthly payment is less than what they're paying in rent right now, and then they become an owner as well. I'm not saying it will happen in that way. That's one of the things that we're watching. So does that increase some demand for residential housing? Condos, townhomes, single-family homes, does that increase some demand for residential housing as rates fall? It could happen. That's one of the things that we're watching to see. Is the consumer feeling confident enough to make that move from a rental space into buying real estate? Do they feel confident enough from a financial standpoint, financial security aspect, all of those kinds of things? Very, very important, indicative of where the consumer is. And that's why we're watching it very closely. So that's one aspect of things. The other thing that's definitely on our radar screen, and this may happen, as rates fall on savings instruments, CDs, money market accounts, savings accounts. Does that mean that there will be a certain segment of folks, certain number of folks, who decide that, I don't want to keep my money in savings and money markets and CDs anymore because I believe that I can earn more in the stock market, or I can earn more gaining a dividend from a common stock as opposed to keeping it in to a money market account? That's one of the things that we're watching. If that happens in some measure, notable measure it would have to be, then that may mean a positive impetus for the stock market. Does that mean that the stock market is going to go straight up? No, not going to happen that way. Could that be a positive motivator for a certain segment of folks to buy more into equities? It may happen. That's one of the things that we're watching, especially with regards to anticipation of stock market performance going into 2025. Now that's, again, you hear me say this a lot, I'm going to say it again, this is not binary. It's not true just because rates come down that stocks go up. I'm going to say it again because I've said this a lot this week to folks who have implied this or just outright said it. Just because rates go down does not mean that stocks go up. It does not. There are so many variables in the algorithm here that it would be inappropriate for us to assume that that's going to be the case. Can that be a motivator in that regard? Sure. Absolutely it can. It's one of the things that we're watching. You couple that with some other positive motivators relative to buying into the equities markets, sure, that could absolutely move the needle. And that may be something that we experience. Now, running headwind to that is the fact that we've had way above average, especially as measured by our most popular stock indices, we've had way above average performance here for the last 2 years, 23 and 24, way above average, as measured again by the S&P 500 index, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and NASDAQ Composite. So does that run counter? Does that run a headwind enough against the impetus, the positive impetus that may be moving in the other direction? What wins out? Then you got to bring in tax policy. Tax policy is sitting out there as well. That definitely can be a motivator or a demotivator for folks who are investing in the equity or bond markets. So how does that play into to the mix of things? Because this sitting Congress is going to be addressing a lot of things, tax-wise here over the course of the next fiscal and calendar years. So how does that motivate into that? Do they shift things? Do they create incentives, even unintentionally? where folks are more intentional about buying things that may be favorable in the equity markets or not. And there's always inflation sitting out there as well. It's not a dormant kind of thing. Just because it's come down doesn't mean it's gone away. So we're going to be watching those kinds of things as well in order to give us some indication about where the markets are. Well, I appreciate so much you hanging with us here on Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. We're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors here on WSIC. Hang with us for the fourth quarter. Coming back in a minute.
More of Dollars and Cents with certified financial planner Joshua Dobi following these brief messages on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Well, mostly cloudy overnight with a scattered shower possible. Temperatures will stay pretty mild in the low to mid 60s. Into our Thursday we go. More clouds than sunshine. Still can't totally rule out a scattered shower as we work our way through the day, although I expect most of us will end up staying dry. Dry weather on the way back for our Friday as temperatures are still back in the low to mid 70s. We'll cool it down in just a bit heading into the weekend. That's your forecast from the WSIC Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Chase Myers.
Cakes and cookies, toys and gifts. The Southern Christmas Show, November 14th through 24th at the Park Expo and Conference Center. Save on tickets at southernChristmasShow.com, courtesy of Kraft Body Scan. The Southern Christmas Show.
Here is your WSIC community calendar. The Dirt Track at Charlotte Motor Speedway presents the World of Outlaws World Finals Wednesday through Saturday. Catch Dirt Racing's top 3 series for 4 days of action to decide their championships, featuring the World of Outlaws Sprint Car Series, the World of Outlaws Late Model Series, and the Super Dirt Car Big Block Modifieds. Single day and 4-day ticket packages plus camping information are all available at charlottemotorspeedway.com. Often imitated, never duplicated. The World of Outlaws World Finals invade the Charlotte Motor Speedway Dirt Track this weekend. Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville is having a veteran celebration on Sunday. Rocky Lynn will perform and rock the lot in a special outdoor concert. Beer Lab and Ghostface Brewing will be offering their full menu of drinks and food. Bring your chairs and enjoy this Veterans Day salute with a Rocky Lynn concert Sunday at Ghostface Brewing in Mooresville. The Mooresville Veterans Day Parade and celebration honors veterans from all branches and from all conflicts. The parade begins Monday, November 11th at Richard's Coffee Shop at 1 p.m. and travels to Mooresville Town Hall. Come join and say thank you to our veterans and hometown heroes on Monday, November 11th in downtown Mooresville. To keep up with all the events happening around the community and much more, including amazing local deals, download the WSIC News app today.
The Renaissance Festival is back Saturdays and Sundays. Now through November 24th, there's music, comedy, circus entertainments. Huzzah! Tickets available online only at renfestinfo.com while supplies last.
We're back now with more of Dollars and Cents with your host, certified financial planner Joshua Dobi on 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Hello and welcome back to Dollars and Cents, presented by North Main Financial. I'm your host, Joshua Dobi. Thank you so much for hanging with us here. Fourth quarter of today's show, Football Reference. Appreciate you hanging with us. This is it. We're on the stretch run, 11 minutes and 52 seconds until we get to that 5 o'clock hour. Appreciate you spending that time with us here. Got to touch on a couple of things. Usually in the fourth quarter here, we're talking about those things which are market related. We've been pretty much doing that the whole show today, especially with regards to the elections and what that means. Market-wise, things to keep in mind, things that are important, definitely things which are not so important, and very important to keep things in context, to make sure that you're not making decisions for the wrong reasons, but that you're making decisions based upon not only what the markets are indicating, truly what they're indicating, but also what's appropriate for you. And I'll just say it another way. Make sure you're making the decisions about whether to buy, sell, or hold, and with regards to your financial plan, in ways that are meaningful for the long term. I mean, there are traders. Maybe you are a trader. You might be a day trader listening to this. And yes, you're making movements based upon what's happening in the moment. Nothing inherently wrong with that. You understand the risks that are associated with that. But if you are one who is investing for the long term, if you are planning for the long term, then it's important to make sure that you're basing your decisions on, wait for it, the long term, truly. So, and I know folks say, well, you know, this is an election, it's a big deal, Oval Office, Congress, all true. Folks, I'll tell you right now, this is not me predicting anything. This is just almost, 30 years of doing this, that we're going to have a referendum inside of 2 years. And when you say, wait a minute, I thought the presidential election, 4 years. Midterm elections are coming up in 2 years. And I promise you, those midterm elections are going to feel like that they're going to happen about 4 nights from now. That's what it's going to feel like. So there is a lot of pressure on this incoming Congress and the Oval Office to do things that they would like to do, because it's not 4 years, it's more like 2 years. And midterm elections are a very, very powerful motivator, because they can shapeshift Congress very quickly, and they can shapeshift it in a different direction from where it is right now. So just keep that on your radar screen. If I was the one, if the president was calling me, or Elon Musk was calling, Elon Musk's not going to call me, but if he was calling me about after they're done partying and celebrating about what to do next, I'd be focusing on that, and I'd make sure that whatever the agenda is going to be fit into that kind of space, because while it seems maybe even premature to say that, the good ones are already planning for it. Got to talk about this company. Now, we've talked about them a lot here over the last several weeks for the obvious reasons, because of the size of the company, and then also their impact on the airline industry, and that's Boeing. Ticker symbol Bravo Alpha BA, not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold the stock. The strike finally ended. So the machinists union that was on strike, 33,000 workers who were out, and so a huge impact on production, huge impact not just right now, but it's going to be an extended term impact on Boeing, on their customers who made plane orders. It's going to be a lasting impact. The strike is finally strike is finally over, and so those folks are going to come back to work. They don't all come back right away. And so it's actually a phasing kind of scenario. It's not just, everybody show up tomorrow at 8 a.m. kind of thing. It is going to be a phase-in kind of scenario. So the actual benefits of the strike being over, going to take a while in order for them to be felt. Boeing's in a challenging place right now. They've had a significant amount of turnover in the C-suite, and so they're trying to get shape-shifted relative to strategy, and then obviously getting back to a sales environment where they're increasing sales, competing against their primary competitor in Airbus. That's going to take some time. But the strike being over, I think, is very good for those who were out, and it's also very good relative to just looking at the competition aspect of things, and certainly for the customers who have made orders on Boeing planes to make sure that those are delivered. All right, got to talk sports here a little bit. I know it's about markets. I'm going to bring in actually a publicly traded company as we're talking sports here. First one, Manchester United. Now, Manchester United actually plays football, so I talk a lot of football here. They play football, and those, my friends in the soccer world would tell me it is actually the true football, and I can't completely disagree with them, even though I love American football. But Manchester United, publicly traded company. You want to buy shares in Manchester United? You can, by the way. Not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold. Man U, by the way, the ticker symbol, wait for it, Man U. Mary Alpha Nancy umbrella is the ticker symbol there. They actually, and one of the most storied, by the way, if you don't follow Premier Soccer overseas, they are one of the most storied franchises that are out there. I mean, just amazing success through the years, but not here very recently. They've gone through a number of different coaches, have not been winning anywhere near the level that they were, say, a decade ago. And so they brought in another coach, 39-year-old Ruben Amorim is now at the helm here from Portugal. It's a tall task. And it is high pressure, especially at that level. I mean, I know we give hyper concentration here in the U.S. to baseball and football and basketball and hockey, but there, when you talk about premier level soccer overseas, that and Formula One, those are top of the heap in terms of the pressure and the intensity and the fan base. I mean, just in case you think I'm making this kind of stuff up, Manchester United, revenue-wise, this is just top line. This is just revenue generation, annual, last fiscal year, approximately. You want to guess on it? I was blown away when I saw it, but it makes sense. $800 million. One soccer club. I'm not talking about the entire league. I'm talking about one soccer club, Manchester United, top-line revenue last year, $800 million. Now that's a machine. You look at it just from a financial standpoint, that's unbelievable. You see some of these contracts, I guess now they make sense. You're talking about $100 million, $150 million, $200 million contracts. So I guess you can do that if you're making nearly $1 billion a year in revenue. Pretty amazing stuff when I saw that. also have to touch it. So I touched on football. Again, the purist would say is true football, but now American football. I got to touch on this. Pretty amazing, especially when you're looking at it from a franchise standpoint and the value of the franchise. Who would have thought that we would be going through a year this year, which is happening this year, where we have the Dallas Cowboys basically out of it, and we have the Detroit Lions, who are arguably the best team in the NFL. Now, for my Detroit Lions fans who are listening, you have been suffering a very long time. So whatever success happens this year for the Lions, I am all for you and all for it, as long as it doesn't interfere with the Panthers, of course. But I am all for it. It's been great to see. But very interesting in terms of the value of the franchise, the payroll, and where the performance has been. Not true that when you're necessarily spending the most amount of money that you're going to win, you're going to win the Super Bowl, or you're going to win the World Series. Ask the New York Yankees here most recently. I'm a Red Sox fan. That's the reason why I had to put the Yankees in there. But it's absolutely true. And this year, so we're seeing the Cowboys spend a lot of money, and they historically do, but really not doing it well at all this year. And then you got the Lions, who have been, let's say, challenged from a winning standpoint here over the last couple of decades, playing lights out football. Really amazing to watch, really fun to watch. Kind of interesting stuff when it comes to the fiscal and financial end of things. All right, let's shift markets. We're in the stretch run, fourth quarter here. Now we're beyond the Halloween. We're beyond the election season. Now we're thinking turkeys and Christmas trees through the end of the year. Or you may be thinking turkeys and Christmas trees through the end of the year. I'm thinking about things like Christmas retail seasons and inflation reports, but that's just because I'm maybe a little unbalanced on my end of things. But we're watching what's going to happen here for the balance of the year, especially with regards to the consumer. You heard me talk about this earlier in today's show about what we're looking at with Christmas retail. What does it mean in terms of the strength of the consumer? What is that going to mean going into 2025? Because we've got dozens of variables in play. We talked about how interest rates are on a downtick, not dropping precipitously, but they're on a downtick. We've talked about how inflation is relatively stable at this point, but in some parts is beginning to tick up. That's one of the concerns about the Federal Reserve's dropping of rates here. Are they doing so too much, too fast? That's going to be something that's going to play out here over the next several months. That could mean that instead of dropping at the rates that maybe the markets want, or maybe even the Federal Reserve wants, that they put a pause on things if inflation tends to be stubborn. So we're going to be watching that very closely, especially going into Q1 of next year, and what that means with regards, again, to the consumer, because if inflation ticks up and those interest rate cuts begin to slow or even stop, does that mean that the consumer gets more pinched in terms of their ability to buy? Could happen. It doesn't, again, it's not linear, so it's not true that that's necessarily going to be or guaranteed to happen, but it could happen in that way. Certainly the Federal Reserve is watching it. We're watching it here. It is going to play out over the next several months. No way really to know that in advance, but that's something that we're going to be watching fairly closely. And then with regards to the overall markets, again, we're trading in narrow ranges right now. That gives me some pause. It does, and I don't want to look, the proverbial gift horse in the mouth with regards to today, or this year's rather, market performance. But it is something that we are watching closely, because when it's a handful of stocks that have done just otherworldly well, which are really powering the overall performance in the market, we call that a lack of market breadth, or we call that a thin market sometimes in looking at it. I get concerned in thin markets, because thin markets tend to move positively very quickly, but also negatively very quickly. And that has some concern for me, because that can be a downdraft, and you get a whole bunch of other things that are drawn in with it. Now, that being said, I'm not seeing the kind of things that are unnaturally concerning about, economically rather, that are unnaturally concerning right now. And I say that because, sometimes there are harbingers. You start to see money flows, either into or out of cash at higher speeds and also with greater volumes. I'm not seeing that right now. I'm not seeing it coming out of the market. I'm not seeing it necessarily go into the market huge, except for days like yesterday, but I'm also not seeing it come out of the market. And I'm watching where the consumer is spending, not just on rents and on mortgages and cars, those things which are definitely more of a necessity on that end of things, but also on the discretionary side of things. How about travel? Travel we're starting to see slow down a little bit. Pricing is starting to come in a little bit, whether you're looking at airlines or hotels. We're starting to see that come in, not fall off the table, but definitely come in from the intensity about where it was. So does that mean, is it, thinking, I guess, argumentatively a little bit linear here, or is it going to continue to move in that direction with any significance? Or are we just in a cycle out? Are we just coming off of a peak a little bit? It's going to be interesting, as it always is. Love following it, love chatting about it with you, and looking forward to doing that more again here next week. All right, folks, wrapping the end here of this week's version of Dollars and Cents presented by North Main Financial. Thank you so much for hanging with us here on WSIC. Tune back in with us next week, Thursdays at 4.
Serving you better than ever before. WSIC.